You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. How would we experience intelligence differently if physical sensations mattered as much as mental reasoning? Join me on an insightful exploration in today's episode. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. We have been conditioned to believe there are hard limits to what our bodies and minds can do. Every sound we hear, every piece of food we eat, every belief we inherit about what is possible has been shaping our DNA and our reality. Dr. Carol Talbot is the architect of multidimensional intelligence, a new operating system for human potential, and the recipient of the Forttuna Global Achievements 2026 Visionary of the Year Award. Holding a PhD in Quantum Morphogenetic Physics, she bridges advanced science, consciousness studies, and embodied wisdom to activate the next evolution of intelligence. A keynote speaker, best-selling author, mentor, and creator of transformational experiences, Carol is known for catalyzing profound shifts through insight, frequency, and direct experience. As the founder of the Possibility Hub, her work supports individuals and leaders to activate their higher blueprint, live from coherence and sovereignty, and lead from conscious creation. Let's meet Dr. Carol Talbot. Hi, Carol. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because multidimensional intelligence is such a fascinating topic, and I feel that you have a perspective to share with our listeners on all of this. I very much look forward to it. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for this invitation.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure, and I am fascinated and intrigued to find out more. I'm so glad that you are here today. And for starters, would you like to share a little bit about yourself, maybe the parts of your journey or your story that you feel relate to what you do today, and share with our listeners also what it is that you do today?
Okay, I'm one of those people who is endlessly curious. And I've always loved learning. It's been my driving force and my motivating force. I'm a bit of a joke with friends. If ever I was going away, it was not on holiday. It was always, they'd say, "Are you going for another fix?" or something like that. So nothing gives me more joy than coming across unusual information and also putting myself into unusual situations. Such as I went in 2023, I went on a dark room retreat, 10 days, 10 nights in complete and utter darkness. It was also a breatharian program, which means no food was being served. There was water and occasionally some juices if you wanted. But imagine just being in complete darkness for 10 days, 10 nights. And I remember being reminded at that time of a question really that's driven me my whole life. I've always been fascinated by the masters, the superhumans, the gurus. Petra, you may have come across a series of books called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. They were published in 1924 by Baird T. Spalding. And in these books, they share the adventures of a group of 11 scientists who in the late 1800s traveled to the Far East to meet and spend time with the masters. During their time, they witnessed all sorts of phenomena, like walking on water, manifesting huge feasts and banquets out of thin air, teleportation. And they also noticed that the masters would go for long periods of time without the need for physical solid food. They seemed to be able to nourish themselves off prana. So to me, this prompts profound questions about the nature of our reality, the nature of our DNA, and the nature of the frequency bandwidth in which they live. And of course, the question that has driven me my whole life is, if they can do it, why can't I? And every experience I do is about pushing boundaries, going beyond the beliefs that we've been taught, the script that we've been handed, to literally open up to new possibilities. So that's my motivation behind the learning and the curiosity.
Thank you for sharing that part of your journey with us. And that sounds fascinating. And I feel that staying curious and open like that through our lifetime is a piece of how we can grow and evolve as humans. I think a lot of people are afraid of change because it often brings different kind of emotions and has us face our own limiting beliefs many times. But staying open to these ideas and questioning and really wanting to have more answers and be curious about that, I feel that is a piece of how we grow ourselves. Wow, this is absolutely curious. And tell us a little bit more about what you found. What are some of the things that have really caught your attention over the past few years? What are you working with now that you have found you'd like to explore more?
This is when I came across something called Quantum Morphogenetic Physics, which is basically what I have a PhD in. And people say, what is it? And it's complex. Yet, in a nutshell, it's basically understanding our true cosmic history. It's also understanding how consciousness, frequency, and energy programs our DNA, and understanding our multidimensional anatomy, that we are more than this physical form. So, as a result of my PhD, I wrote my thesis on bioregenesis of the DNA blueprint through source feeding. Sounds a bit of a mouthful. So let me just backtrack there. Most people have heard of biohacking, but bioregenesis takes it a little bit more further in terms of looking at natural ways to repair our DNA, because our DNA holds a lot of distortions due to conditioning, programming, and the toxins and additives in our food. Petra, if you go to the supermarket these days and you look at the rows and rows of packages, it's hard pushed to call it food. It isn't these days, and what we're ingesting. So bioregenesis of the DNA blueprint through source feeding was my way of discovering if it's possible to repair the distortions in our DNA through pranic living, the breatharian path. So breatharians live off prana, like the masters. Now, there are different levels of breatharianism to explore. I'm what's called a level 3, which means I do eat occasionally. However, I don't need to. And that's a huge program to break free from, because we're conditioned to eat for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, snacks in between. So many of us, if you ask, what are you really hungry for, or why are you eating? It's because it's breakfast time, or it's lunch time, or it's dinner time. It's the hands on a clock. And again, it's about different times of the year where there's celebration around food. Everything centers around food, particularly so these days. So it is a big program to break free from. But if you ask people what they're really hungry for, they're not starving for food. They're more starving for love, success, recognition. So next time you reach in the cupboard, ask, what are you really hungry for? That's what I wrote about in my book that I published at the beginning of this year, which was called Reimagine You, Bioregenesis of the DNA Blueprint Through Source Feeding. It was basically putting my thesis into a more palatable form, because as when you write a thesis, you've got all your research and studies there. But here I am, nearly 2 years into my journey as a level 3 breatharian. Is it possible? Yes. And is it possible in terms of being healthy? Yes. Lots of misconceptions, though, because I remember when I came back from another retreat, which was focused towards pranic living, where we were also doing dry fasting. And of course, we've been taught that if you go more than 3 days without water, then your body starts to shut down. It doesn't. Dry fasting is no food, no water. And what happens is it does push your body into autophagy very quickly. But once your body goes into that state, the stem cell crew start waking up. You also release your own endogenous water, your own natural living water, which is much easier for your body to deal with. And of course, you start healing. So there's many benefits. Now, when I came back from that program, I must say I was very slim. And I was going through a frequency upgrade and shift, which was very disconcerting at the time. And I stayed with it because part of the protocol was no food, no chewing for at least 2 months. We were allowed water. And then after 2 weeks, we could also have diluted juices or diluted soup, but it was liquid only. So it was really quite a challenging transition in terms of frequency, but it did start to open the door to repairing my DNA. And once you understand that DNA is a transmitter and receiver of consciousness, then your world opens up in a new way. DNA is also multidimensional, which means that different skills, gifts, and abilities can be accessed at different levels of your DNA as it starts to open up. And just a little caveat here, often people talk about 12-strand DNA activation. That's a no-no, because if you activated all 12 strands, you would not be here in physical form. So there's a lot of misconceptions there. What did happen for me, though, was new skills and abilities started to open up. Skills, gifts, and abilities that I had searched for my whole life through this question, if the masters can do it, why can't I? So just an aside here, I even went on a month-long program about 10 years ago to see if I could learn to walk on water like the masters. Did I succeed? No, I sank every time. But one thing I have succeeded in is that I do run firewalking events. I teach people to walk across burning hot coals of about 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. And when people ask me why, it's simply because if you do something like that where you've been taught and told completely impossible, and you do it anyway, it opens the door and begs the question, if I can do that, what else have I been taught and told that is impossible and that's not true? So it leads you to start questioning the conditioning and what you've been told and taught. So in terms of my gifts, I had no intention of writing or publishing another book. I have long gaps between my books, and I'm talking 8 to 10 years. But the idea and the architecture of multidimensional intelligence came to me. And Petra, I don't know whether you've had one of those nights where you just can't sleep. So you either toss and turn. For me, I always get up and do something. So I got up and I made some notes that night. And the notes were the structure for the whole of this book that I wrote, Multidimensional Intelligence, Activating a higher blueprint for human evolution. And I wrote that book in Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, which we celebrate in this part of the world. And then obviously you go through and revise it through drafts. So that's how the book came about. That was just the first level, because I thought I was going to be publishing a book. But the book led to the multidimensional field scans. Again, a gift that's opened up where I find that I can mirror that which is at the multidimensional field for people. So when people have challenges, they may come and say, I've done the mental shifts and my life's still not altering. The multidimensional field scans highlight the energetic architecture of you, your multidimensional field. and looks at karmic patterns, ancestral blocks. It goes across maybe 15, 16 different areas, including mental blocks. And the way I liken this is, and I'm sure you've found this with your clients, that often we feel like we're stumbling in the dark, bumping into things, tripping up, and we don't know what's tripping us up. We don't know what we're bumping into. So the multidimensional field scan is like switching on the light. So you can see the wires, you can see what you're bumping into. And of course, people have the choice. They can turn off the light again, but at least they'll know what they're bumping into. Or they can clear the field and shift into a new frequency.
That sounds really amazing and actually like a lot of insight for people that are looking at those scans and reading those. It might feel really that you're challenging a lot of our perceptions here of what we know our world to be like, what we think our world to be like, thinking that we have to do this, we have to do this. And as you start exploring, there may come a point where we realize maybe all of those limits and constraints that we have taken for granted aren't really there. So this has me very curious. And for our listeners who may not be familiar with when we're talking multidimensional, we're talking about the field, can you give them a bit of insight about what we mean by that? Also, maybe in scientific terms, and what does that mean when we talk about this?
Okay, so multidimensional intelligence is really our capacity to perceive and interpret beyond linear thinking across energy, frequency, time, and consciousness. So it's more about bandwidth rather than storage. So if you think about bandwidth, it's multidimensional intelligence is about upgrading your ability to transmit, receive, and interact with this beautiful informational field that we bathe in, that we live in, that actually shapes our reality. Let me give you a sort of easy metaphor to understand what's really going on here. Most people will have maybe a subscription to, say, Netflix or Prime or Apple TV. So let's take Netflix. If you want to watch anything on Netflix, you have to set up an account with your email address and a password. And if you want to watch anything that's streaming on that network, you need to log in. And then you can watch anything you like that's available on that network. But if you want to watch anything on, say, Prime or Apple or something else that isn't on Netflix, you have to set up another account, another password, and log in and stream what's there. The fact is that we are in an incredible multidimensional field, bathing in consciousness, energy, frequency. And most of us have had glimpses of this. So a glimpse would be those times when you think of somebody and they call and you think, I just thought of that person. Or times where you have this amazing idea and it seems to come out of the blue. But for most people, those are hit and miss. It's not whenever you want, it's just random. And so they find that this connection that they have to this informational field is glitchy. It's a poor internet connection. They find maybe their life keeps buffering or looping. So multidimensional intelligence is basically teaching you and highlighting how you can upgrade your internet connection to this super informational field that we are always connected to. And for me, that's where information comes through effortlessly and easily. When I want to be discerning, there's those subtle intuitive cues. So it's awakening your higher sensory perception. We are far more than our five senses. And sadly, most people experience the world only through their five senses. Actually, you can't prove anything exists or anyone exists outside of your five senses because that's how we experience the nature of our reality. So with multidimensional intelligence, it's taking you beyond those boundaries and really opening you up to new potentials, new gifts, which to me are our birthright, are our brilliance. It's like the masters and the gurus showed us what's possible. It's now time for us to remember.
Wow. Yes, I do feel that definitely this is a perspective that might challenge a lot of sort of this 3D worldview of what we're doing. We get up, we eat, we go to work, we pay our taxes, we take care of our families. That reality that we're trapped in. Still, I feel that many people in that reality feel that there has to be more to this. There has to be more to life, because is life really just about working ourselves into chronic stress and paying taxes, and at some point we die? I love this idea that there is more for us to explore. There is more for us to experience. And through this scan that you have talked about, I feel that can open the door, or maybe our awareness, our perception into that exploration a little bit more. Now, I will say that I did the scan. So for our listeners, I do have a report here on my scan. And I just want to say that a lot of things in the scan are things that I felt inside, but I didn't have words for it. Things that I wondered about that were happening in my life, but I didn't really know how to say it or what exactly it was connected to. So for me, this scan that Carol is talking about has really brought clarity into what is happening in my life, and also why that is happening. As she was talking about, we're bumping into things in the dark and we don't really know what they are. Exactly, that is how I felt when I read the scan, and I was going, yes, that's happening in my life. Oh yes, this I'm experiencing, but I don't know why or exactly what that's related to. Carol, let us know a little bit more about how people can actually apply these scans in their lives. I feel that when we get this information and all of a sudden there's words to maybe what we've been experiencing, but what do we do with that? Where do we go from there when we have the scan?
So the scan looks at about 15, 16 different areas, from mental loops, the chakras, karmic blocks, ancestral patterns. So it really does highlight where and what may be tripping you up. And it is a mirror for that which is in your field. So there should be, and there usually is, that sort of air of familiarity. But as we said, often people have done the mental shifts and the mental blocks. They think they've cleared them, and yet nothing is happening on the outside. So the scans are a mirror, but they show the energetic architecture, so you can understand yourself from a higher and bigger perspective. They're a written report because when you read them, it starts to activate certain things in your field. So, for example, when you've climbed to the top of the mountain, you've seen the view. And even if you never climb the mountain again, you've seen the view. So it's in your field. So it starts to activate certain things within you the more that you read it. So it's not just a report that you read once and push it aside. It's an activation in its own right, and it utilizes certain language patterns as well to help start creating the shifts. And again, I know this because I've worked with many different people with the field scans, and I went through extensive testing with them, with people that I know and people that I don't know. Because with people I know, I have to be very clean. If you have a clairvoyant or telepathic or psychic reading, they're usually interpreting it through their own perception, like wearing their own glasses. This is a mirror. So there's nothing of me in there. And I close the field afterwards. So the field shows you basically what frequency, what playground you are playing in, if I want to use the metaphor. I'm also able to get a person's baseline signature frequency. This is the frequency, the electromagnetic field that you emit and attracts like. So you may not be aware of it, but certain situations, diseases, people, trauma come into your field. They may not be an exact frequency match, but there's a resonance. And this is the reason that people maybe have had abusive patterns in their life. And so they leave the relationship, they move halfway across the world. And what happens next? They go into another relationship, which would seem to be completely different, but it's the same pattern because that frequency is still the same. So, taking the field scans further, we get your baseline signature frequency of where you are now. And as the frequency scans or the field scans also show and highlight optimal timelines. Timelines are future or possible paths that are open to you right now or open to you in the future based on certain decisions you may choose. So this is beautiful to see. And often clients say, I want to be on that timeline. So we get the baseline signature frequency of your optimal timeline. And there's going to be a gap from where you are now to this new playground where you want to be. Now, wouldn't it be lovely if I could just go whoosh and slap you into that new baseline signature frequency and you're there? If that happened, it would be, Petra, a bit like a plant medicine experience. I don't know if you've experienced any of that, but it slaps you basically into different frequencies where you see different things, you experience different things, yet you cannot hold that frequency. You're all over the place. And what happens is people may go and have a plant medicine experience, then they come back into their body, so to speak, and many people will integrate that experience, but many will not, which means that they end up going back and forth between those experiences and it just becomes your next addiction. Not very valuable. So again, it opens the door. What I do is I entrain people incrementally through a container group into those new frequencies. So I've also developed an audio, which I call entrainment. There's 4 different tracks: coherence, resonance, alignment, and entrainment, to help assist you get faster to those new baseline signature frequency, into that new playground, so to speak. Now, I always have questions. And the question is, when you entrain to the new frequency, how come you don't see instant shifts in your life? You see a little here and there, but not enough. That's because we live in a time-space reality where there's a time drag and a time lag between entraining to a frequency and it materializing in physical form. Now, as frustrating as that may be, it's also very valuable because think about if you have a thought and it instantly manifests, you'd go, oh, I didn't mean that. You'd soon tidy up your thoughts. So I also check the time lag, which could be 30, 40 days, it could be 60 days. And because I'm one of those impatient people, I look at how can we shorten that gap? And that's the reason that I developed the entrainment audio, to again help people not only entrain, but start creating physical materialization. Because if they are entrained to a new frequency, certain people will lead their life, certain issues will lead their life, certain diseases cannot operate at that level of consciousness. However, when people do not see a physical shift, that means they can start going backwards. They can start going back to the old playground. So this is where the work that you and I do is to support people to stay in that new playground, to stay in those frequencies, that level of consciousness. And then that's where coherence, resonance, and alignment starts opening the door to new possibilities. In terms of trauma, the resonance and coherence starts training your DNA to calm down. DNA may respond to thoughts, but research shows it responds to coherence, it responds to states. And you know this from working and experiencing trauma, that sadly, most of us are in a state of alert most of the time. Whether it's a ping from your phone or somebody says urgent, our body from the moment we wake up is on the alert. which trains your DNA to be in reactive response mode. One of the other challenges I'm sure you've experienced when working with people is to be still, to be silent. Because again, we've been conditioned and programmed that we have to do more. So what else do I need to do, Carol? What else do I need to do, Petra? How do I make this? They're on the alert, whereas actually it's about slowing everything down. So going back to my darkroom experience, spending 10 days, 10 nights in complete and utter darkness, magical things happen. Huge amounts of melatonin are released in the body, which repair the DNA. Then you get pinoline being produced, which creates lucid dreams. And if you stay longer periods, then you get 5-MeO-DMT. But most importantly, everything slows down. We were allowed to talk. You just don't want to. It encourages silence. And it encourages those beautiful spaces of stillness and enjoying solitude. And here's another thing we've been taught. We've been taught to fear the dark, and we've been taught that light is good, dark is bad. And I share this as someone who slept with a nightlight for the majority of my life. I was always scared of the dark. But you know what? I wasn't scared in the darkroom at all. It has a beautiful warmth and energy to it. And if you think of some of the ceremonies that many of the indigenous tribes or people of wisdom utilize, often those experiences are done when the sun's setting and going down, rather than broad daylight. So it's about questioning what we've been told and taught and conditioned to believe.
I just want to let that sit there just for a couple of seconds, what you said, because I feel it's so powerful. And stillness used to actually cause me panic attacks. And I think a lot of people who have experienced challenging times, trauma, chronic stress, and they are in this vigilant state, that's what stillness means at first. It means that panic because having to look inward is a difficult thing at that point when you're hypervigilant. Coming into that space over time, for me, as you have said, that has become a healing piece of my journey, is coming into that stillness. And I slept with a nightlight for most of my life as well, so I can relate.
Not the only one then.
Yeah. And I feel now the darkness is actually something I quite welcome. Right now, we're in a time where yesterday we had the longest night of the year.
Yes.
And I absolutely reveled in that and felt really held and loved, almost like being in a sort of metaphorical womb, being held in that darkness and that loving space. So a lot has shifted, I feel, when we allow that stillness to bring healing, when we allow the darkness to bring healing. But again, as you said, we have to be able to hold those frequencies and those containers before we can step into those. So a bit of a process, but something I'm starting to appreciate now and really feel that there's a lot of healing in this as well, that we as humans can definitely work with.
This is healing up our DNA.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And that's when things open up. But one other thing, Petra, I'd say here is, and particularly when I hear people and clients come with a particular story, is to change again the narrative that it's past, present, future. I switch that around. It's future, present, past. And I'll explain why. If you think in a movie, they develop the movie, the story, and the characters. And then the characters are given a backstory. So it's the same for your life. When you think about where you want to be, that's your goal, your timeline, your optimal timeline. Where do you need to be now? And what backstory is going to support you? And that means letting go of the story that you have carried your whole life, because it's not going to help you create the movie of your future that you want to create. So this is the silence, the stillness, the solitude, to come into a still point of now, what am I creating? Who do I need to be now? And what's the story that can support that? Because I hear people utilizing the same backstory again and again, and it recreates it in the system. I say recreates it in the system because we can't go back to being 4 years old, 2 years old, 10 years old, or whenever a traumatic experience happened. But what we are doing is recreating it in the now, which isn't helpful. So this is about retraining your nervous system and healing up the DNA. Because another way to think of DNA is if you put a film strip in a camera, when light hits the film strip, it projects that which is on the film onto a screen. Now, if there's scratches and glitches on that film strip, then the film that you're going to watch is going to be a glitchy, jumpy, it's not going to make sense. The same happens with your DNA. When consciousness comes in and hits the DNA, it projects what's on the DNA as your holographic reality, your world. So when there's distortions in your DNA, there's going to be distortions in your outer reality. So again, this completes the loop of the DNA is important, the stillness, the silence, the solitude, retraining your nervous system so your DNA can start doing what it's meant to do, project a beautiful playground for you to play in.
Yeah. Wow. I feel so empowering when you say that. And I never thought of it that way, that yes, the backstory. And that's what we keep bumping into, I feel, with a lot of our patterns that are repeating and our limiting beliefs, because that is usually generated in our backstory that then starts feeding into the present and the future. So that actually makes a lot of sense. Aside from the scan and the audios, the entrainment audios that you have created, what else can listeners do once they have read their scan to keep moving in that direction of actually moving into that different timeline or really elevating their frequency? What else can they do to continue that journey?
Often the scan will give certain guidelines into what will support them. And it really depends on the scan. Different information comes through when I'm mirroring people's scans or mirroring their field and putting their scans together. But again, it's about taking time. Here's one thing that comes up on virtually everybody's scan. I can't remember which number it comes up, but it's rest and relaxation. It's towards the end. And I've checked, why does this come up the same for virtually everybody? And it's what we've just explained. Most people's system is on the alert and they're not comfortable being silent or still. Also, nourishing themselves. Again, for me, being breatharian predominantly, it's looking at how I nourish myself in different ways. So nourishment comes through maybe a great conversation with a friend, listening to good music, being out in nature. There are so many different ways to nourish yourself. And yet, the reason I created entrainment as a sort of sound frequencies to help people is to think about everywhere we go, we're bombarded, not just with food, but with noise and sound. If you go to a shopping mall, every single shop has a different sound blasting out. And it's been proven that frequencies can create a crowd getting angry and furious, and certain sounds can also calm a crowd down. So, is sound purposefully used to condition and program us? Yes. So, this is where once you start coming more into stillness and being comfortable with it, you learn to be discerning. One of the greatest qualities that you can develop for yourself is discernment, because this is tapping into your innate intuition, if you like it. How many people have said, "Oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that"? Of course, we've all had times where it's like, no, but I went against what I knew I should do anyway. It teaches you to listen. Is this good for me or not? Again, the field of kinesiology, muscle testing, shows the body's intelligence. But again, tapping into your intuition, the more you listen to it, the more it'll start to gift you with insights. And as I said, with the field scans, they automatically start to shift your frequency and playground because you're able to see the wires and the blocks that are tripping you up. And I shared earlier, you have the choice to switch off the light again, but at least you'll know what's tripping you up, or you can start to clear them. It is like looking in a mirror and seeing yourself in all your brilliance, all the layers, in all your glory. Sometimes we can't see our own backside. And to have that mirror and realize the brilliance of who you are starts to wake you up. One of my clients she was brought up in an abusive family. She ended up in an abusive partnership and relationship, which she has had the courage to leave. But we talked about the playground and it's about frequency shift. Bless her, she did the field scan. She's also been working with the entrainment audios. And every now and then she sends me a beautiful message. Her field scan also gave some recommendations to help and support her. And she said, Carol, I feel the happiest that I've ever been in my whole life. I get goosebumps when I think of that because, again, DNA responds to state. So the mere fact that she's feeling happy and happier than she's been in her whole life means that different opportunities, different people will start being attracted to that frequency, and other people and situations will just automatically leave. So those are the experiences that warm my heart when people receive the multidimensional field scan or begin working with me through the mentorship and mastery mapping. I've worked my whole life really in the field of personal development for myself and then supporting others with the programs that I've run in the past as well. It's such a joy to see people come into their brilliance and to be sovereign. I'm not a big fan, Petra, of people following or saying, oh, Carol, what do I do next? What do I do next? What do I do next? I am a big fan of empowering people and for getting them to stand in their own innate power and brilliance.
Thank you for that. And that to me is also a big point of when we do begin this journey, when we immerse ourselves in this, we look for our own healing, is that empowerment, I feel, really is that piece that will bring us the most healing, the most joy, the most alignment when we discover our own power in all of this, when we discover our own purpose, and that innately that we are all capable of doing this. We just have to maybe clear out some things that are blocking us in the moment. But I love that idea of empowering people to find all of this for themselves. So thank you for sharing that. And I just want to add here that Carol also has her own podcast called The Possibility Hub. So if you want to know more about all of this, if you want to dive deeper around some of the things that we've spoken about today, I also encourage you to listen into that and from any of your favorite podcast providers so that you can get more information on a few of the things that we touched on today and what we spoke about. And Carol, I'm just going to ask for our listeners as well, if they're curious now, they've heard about this field scan and they want to know what's in their field scan, how can they connect with you and what kind of services, programs, and resources do you have available for our listeners?
I love to support people. And as I said, I'm a great believer in supporting them to stand on their own 2 feet. I see too many people attached to somebody and not thinking for themselves. So they can contact me, Instagram, Carol K. Talbot. The website is multi-dimensionalintelligence.com. And there they'll see the options for the scans, the multidimensional field scans, and some of the other work that I do. And if they have questions, they're welcome to ask. I welcome questions. As you know, being curious myself, I welcome curiosity.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And my field scan curiously also says rest as repair. That's one of the things that will help me along. So I feel that this is kind of a theme maybe for a lot of people, that in this world we are very overstimulated, overactivated, sort of over everything. And as you said, coming back into that stillness will actually open up a lot of different perspectives in our own healing journey. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Carol's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there how you can try out your own multidimensional field scan. And I have to say, it's a comprehensive report. I think you will learn a lot of things about yourself that will resonate maybe in a way where you go, I felt this, but I just didn't know what to call it. Or I was thinking this, but I didn't know what exactly it was related to. So a very interesting and fascinating document that you can look at to get more insight in what's happening in your own life. And if you do decide to get the scan, let me know. I'm always curious to find out how our listeners make out with these things, and reach out to us as well on the socials or reach out on our website and let me know what your experience was. I'd love to know more. And Carol, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your wisdom with us and sharing this insight about how we actually can open up our own perspective and find different and more paths to our own healing and our own alignment. I truly appreciate it. And thank you also for providing a field scan for me so that I can experience this for myself and share a little bit of that experience on the podcast with our listeners. I'm truly grateful that you've been here with me today.
And I'm truly grateful for this invitation to share. Thank you so much, Petra.
Absolutely. I feel this is something that anybody can benefit from if they are looking to have more insight and more information as well. And of course, healing is another piece that I feel is so needed in this world today. I'm happy to share this and hear back from our listeners and what their experiences are. So thank you, Carol, for being here today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Take really great care of yourselves and be well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.